I bet you're expecting cold shot, weren't you? Admit it. Guys, welcome back. This is Eric here with Guitarsenal. And today we're going to be talking about Leslie cabinets and specifically the Leslie 16. There's a lot of sort of myth that gets spread around about Leslie cabinets. I'm going to try my best to explain it as best I can. Leslie cabinets are essentially a rotating speaker type cabinet originally. Organists used them back in the day. And you know, that kind of unmistakable organ sound that a lot of people associate with church organs or with soul music, where you're really hearing that just kind of warbly sound that they get out of some of the organs and stuff and all. And the Hammond sound, everything like that, is associated to a Leslie type cabinet. This particular cabinet is optimized for guitar use. The two aren't exactly the same. The preamps are different, and the construction of the cabinets in terms of how they manipulate the sound is different. You can make like the Model 122s and 132s and all the earlier style of Leslie can be made to work with a guitar, and a lot of the guitarists back in the 60s and stuff, they used these things to really good effect in that manner. But like around, I want to say around the late 60s, you know, Fender released the Vibratone cabinet, and then, you know, this is a Leslie cabinet, which from what I understand, basically made by Leslie, but they're just branded Fender. If you look on the back of a Fender Vibratone, you'll often see the Leslie logo anyway. So Leslie's pretty much the name that most people associate with a rotary speaker type of sound. So you can probably hear a little bit of noise in the background here if I just shut up for a second. Okay. I'm just going to inch the volume up a little bit. You can hear that rotating effect. What is offering that rotating effect is a rotating, basically a baffle, okay? A motor drives a baffle that spins over the top of the speaker on this particular unit is facing out. It actually rotates a baffle across the speaker and then spreads the sound out of the sides of the cabinet and the top of the cabinet. So you can see that if I put my hand over this, I can feel air being displaced by that rotating baffle, or whatever you want to call it, rotating assembly. You basically have a speed control. I'm going to demonstrate quickly the differences when you speed up a Leslie and you slow down a Leslie. So what you heard in that intro was kind of my take somewhat on Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden, and Leslie was utilized in the recording of that sound. So you can really hear that wobbling effect. So there's a Doppler effect and there's a chorus effect. So I'm going to initiate the speed control and I'm going to slow it down. And I want you to hear the way that, and we are going to compare this to a Univibe, by the way. I've got a Deja Vibe full tone down there. So this is the chorus sound. All right, now listen. First let me tune back up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit a chord, and I'm going to allow the Leslie to speed up and slow down as I switch between the different speeds. That's one of the unique things about these, is you can really hear that transition, and that's what makes these things so special. And the way that they spread the sound around the room, you notice that I'm running a Fender bass breaker to run the Leslie. It's not powered. You have to run a tube amp into it. And we're miking each side of the Leslie with an SM57. And this is a Sennheiser 609 cabinet mic that we've got slightly off the cone, and then we get some room mic picking up too. So miking these things is a little bit of a bear. Listen to this. So. Speeding it up. All right, that's your chorus sound. Speed it up. Okay, so that gives you an example of how it speeds up and slows down. The Leslie sound is a very unique sound. A lot of people compare it to Univibe, and a Univibe is a very unique phasing type of sound, which really this is sort of a phasing type of sound in a way too, because it's literally moving air and moving sound. The way that a Univibe works is by use of photocells. And basically what it is a little box in there that a photocell reacts to, and it bounces light off of like a little mirror box. And that's what gives it the illusion of pulsing in space. And it uses those light, the photosensor to essentially like get those light profiles in, and you'll hear it almost in a way. All right, so this is a Univibe, and what we'll do is we'll disengage a Leslie. So we're not running Leslie now. Now we're running a Univibe. And all right, that's a Univibe. I'll let a few chords kind of ring out. That's not terrible. All right, and then here's our Leslie. All right, for fun, here's the chorus setting on the Leslie. Let's add a Univibe on top of the Leslie. Sounds pretty good, okay? No matter how you run that, you're in good territory. Now, let's get a little bit silly. I've got a capered fuzz on the floor down here. I'll play a few sort of things with some fuzz. All right, we're gonna engage the Leslie. Right now we're in the chorus setting. All right, we'll speed the Leslie up. Not too bad there. It's a little noisy, but that's because the fuzz is sort of noisy. We'll engage an overdrive pedal. Try with some in-between settings here. See how we get. Okay, a little noisy, but not too bad. And what I'll do is I'll try to play with the wah a little bit. I'm trying to just let you hear how some different effects sound through the Leslie. And I'll just quickly sort of talk a little bit about, miking these things and the different ways you can run them, because there's a lot of conflicting information and a lot of confusing information. The configuration that I am running this Leslie in, this particular Leslie, it says it's a Leslie 16. They offered these Leslies in a couple of different configurations. You had a 16, which is a 10-inch, and you had an 18, which is a 12-inch. This Leslie, along with my other Leslie, has been upgraded to Leslie 18 specs, which means it's had a 12-inch speaker installed. And the original speakers were like the old Utahs, what they called. Not bad speakers, but the way these things were intended to be ran was with a crossover, which, when engaged, would remove the mid frequencies and send the middle frequencies to this, and the lows and the highs would stay on the parent amplifier. The way that I am running this is as an external speaker. I'm actually running a replacement crossover that was made by Andrew's Amp Lab. He actually prototyped that particular foot switch with my two Leslies. And now he offers it as a service to build the crossover assemblies, because I acquired these without foot switches. And if you're shopping for Leslies and it doesn't include the original foot switch, at a minimum in really good shape where it can be rebuilt into a stronger enclosure, you might want to consider seeing if they'll knock $250 off the price, because a good foot switch for one of these is going to run you, a proper crossover being built is going to run you a couple of hundred, if not, $300, depending on how it's set up. So there's two ways to run it. The way I'm running it is into the Fender Bass Breaker's extension cabinet jack. So the original frequencies are coming through the bass breaker. That's how, for instance, let's just hit a chord here. I'm not going to try to play much, but just... All right, right now, it has this almost muffled and muddy sound, but it's nice and smooth and deep and rich. It almost has that kind of blanket laid over a speaker sound when you're hearing the audio coming through the Leslie. And just to show you just how much that effect is, now look, I'm going to bypass the Leslie. Now, this is just going through the Fender. Nice and bright. We engage the Leslie. You've got this chorusing effect. So what I'll do, to really drive the point home, I'm going to put the amp on standby. I'm going to change out, now the reason we chose the bass breaker for this, is I'm going to change out to the main speaker jack, which cancels automatically the main speaker. of the bass breaker. So now you're going to hear drastically different sounds. It's not going to sound quite as good, but now you're only hearing the Leslie. So, in theory. Okay, now, once I turn the Leslie on, now you're hearing the Leslie. This is just the Leslie, no sound coming out of the Fender. So that's cool. If you listen to that Soundgarden intro and it's got this just very pronounced Leslie effect, it's very, very likely possibility that he could have used it in the same configuration that I'm using it here. If you listen to those little chords again, let's just try to sort of get there. That's just the Leslie. Get it back down to the chorus mode, and then you get, into the type of sound. If you're making a recording of some type and you just want those kind of juicy comping sounds, you can get the sort of, I guess what comes to my mind is sort of like the... And you get that kind of chorusy type of sound out of it. So in terms of running it, you can run it with the crossover, sending the mids to the amp or to this itself, and then leaving the low frequencies and high frequencies coming out of the amplifier itself. Or if you're in a live situation, the way that I would run it is through the actual external speaker jack. That way the Leslie just becomes sort of an effect that's added into your existing signal. That's the most efficient way to run it if you're in a live setting, is exactly how I would have it here. Now, that complicates things because you can't drive these things super, super hard. You don't want to, run anything too stupid through them, or you can damage them. So the lower volumes you run at, then that would also, mean that you would need to mic the combo, and you would need to mic each side of the Leslie, where the sound comes out of the sides through these grill cloths here. When I engage it and I have it on, see, fast speed, and it starts moving, you can almost feel a little air getting pushed out of the side of this thing. And that's good. You're literally moving air, and that's what makes the Leslie a much different effect than a Univibe. Is the Univibe is a facsimile. It's not meant to necessarily copy a Leslie exactly, but people associate the sound of a Univibe with a Leslie, but the two effects are very different. A Univibe is a pulsing kind of sound that's almost like more of a phase, a modulation. It sounds great. It's supposed to be sort of faking the sound of moving air, whereby this literally does move air. I mean, you're getting a physical movement of the signal. So in a live situation, if you were, let's just say, miking one of these things, you would mic it on each side. In this case, run a pair of SM57s, and you would run one side to one side of the stage, and one of the other sides to the other side of the stage, left and right. And that way it's panning as it's going. It makes this just big open sound. Leslies also sound great with 12-string guitars, and they sound good with acoustics. If you want to add something like this to an acoustic rig, it really does add a lot of shimmer to an acoustic guitar. So that's my take on a Leslie. Hopefully I've done it justice, and yes, I'll play the riff from Cold Shot, because I know that's everybody that looks up a Leslie video like, play Cold Shot! It's kind of like Cold Shot is like the free bird of the Leslie cabinet. Like, that's why I wanted to be a rebel, and I wanted to play Soundgarden instead of Stevie Ray Vaughan, because I didn't want people I wanted to get your hopes up and then crush those hopes completely. All right, so, yeah, you get that, I really should have played the Cold Shot intro before I changed it over, because you just hear that just drastic wobble that Stevie gets out of the Leslie cabinet when he's playing Cold Shot. And it's just wonderful. And you get these overtones, and you get this sort of feedback that kind of comes through it. And to me, that's just really where these things shine, is that movement and that kind of like brink of being on the edge of just falling apart. It's just this hard thing to describe, but it's a very unique sound, in my opinion. So. Horrible playing, but that's the sound. People associate the Leslie cabinet with songs like Cold Shot. Obviously Black Hole Sun is a very Leslie heavy tune. There's lots of other Leslies. You'll hear, all different, George Harrison used the Leslie quite a bit. Obviously Hendrix recorded with Leslie quite often. Very subtle way of recording the guitar, but if you listen to a lot of Hendrix tunes, there's definitely some subtle Leslie work in there as well. So obviously many other artists, but they're neat. It's not the kind of thing that's for everybody. They're expensive. They're heavy to lug around. They're rare and stupid expensive in terms of fixing something. If something breaks, you're gonna have to know somebody to help you fix them, because unless you're tech savvy, you're not gonna wind up finding somebody to help you work on them. They're a pain in the butt to move around. They weigh 60, 70 pounds. They're heavy. But there's no replacement for a Leslie. To get that real, genuine article type of sound out of a rig like this, you have to have a Leslie. Now, for people that might be looking into a Leslie cabinet, but they don't want something like this, there are pedals that can replicate, I can't speak today, the sound of a Leslie cabinet. Some of them are good, but of course it's still not the real thing. You're not physically moving air like this thing does. And then also there are other companies, tons of other companies actually, that have previously made varieties of a Leslie type cabinet, rotating speaker. They say rotating speaker, but it's really a baffle or a thing in there that rotates, not the speaker itself. And the older Leslies are the ones that have like maybe a physical, like rotating horn mechanism and all of these other fancy frequencies that get spread out. The older Leslies are designed to kind of project a very different frequency range than what these are. So if you are going to get a Leslie, and if you're serious about owning one, make sure, look for a 16 or 18, save yourself a lot of headache. Make sure it's got a good crossover, a good foot switch. And guys, the foot switch on a lot of them, it's just this little toothy plastic thing. Sometimes they've fallen apart, broken, messed up. Make sure it works, and have somebody either build you one up into a newer box. And also, if you're going to get one of these, I would strongly recommend putting a new speaker in it. The original Utah speakers that were in them are not bad, but their frequency ranges are meant to accentuate mid-frequencies because it was designed to be ran as a crossover. and not as, you know, the way I'm running it as an external speaker. So if you're going to run it as an external speaker, to get the maximum life out of your Leslie, I would recommend redoing the speaker. And if it is a 16, upgrade it to 18 spec and put a good, sturdy, well-made speaker in it that can handle a very wide frequency range, because trust me, you don't want to blow a speaker in this thing. So anyway, that's my take on it. Stick to low wattage amps. I wouldn't go running like a twin reverb or anything through it or anything silly. Keep it low wattage. Respect them. They're old, but they're wonderful, and they definitely belong in any studio. Or if you're a tone nut like I am, a personal collection in my case, I do have 2 of them. They're wonderful. I did acquire them very cheaply. I bought them in not working order, and then I was lucky enough to find somebody to help me get them running again. And then the guy up at Andrew's Amp Lab there made me the crossovers for them, and they're working great. I haven't had any single issue out of either cabinet. So there's my take on the Leslie, guys. I know this video was kind of long, but I really just wanted to do a video on the Leslie cabinet because a lot of folks tend to not understand how they work and what they do and what their intended purpose is. And more importantly, I mean, there's information out there about them, but I haven't really been able to find anybody showing the differences between running it in the true kind of original crossover type configuration or running as an external speaker and discussing the differences. I mean, if you're going to run this in a live situation, then you would obviously just run it as an external speaker, mic it like we have it, and what you're hearing, that's what's going to be going through the PA. So use your ears, take that as for what you will, and it kind of is what it is. So sorry for the sloppy playing. I'm not an expert or anything, but that points you in the right direction, gives you some Leslie-like sounds, and there you go. So guys, thank you for watching. We post every Monday and Friday. Be sure to subscribe. If you found this video very enjoyable, or if you learned something, consider donating $1 on Patreon to help out our efforts. Guys, we don't make any money off these videos. We make these videos just because we want to help out the internet community. So if you found it useful, consider donating $1. But if not, that's cool too. We're going to keep making them either way. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day. We'll see you next time.